Trent Cotney and John Kenney are dedicated to helping the construction industry with legal business and safety challenges. Welcome to this week's episode of Law and Mortar.
Hey, this is Trent Cotney. I'd like to welcome everybody to another episode of Law and Mortar. As always, I got John Kenney with me. John, how you doing?
Great. It's always great to be here, especially at the end of the week like we usually do them.
Yeah, yeah. I tell you, it's been a busy time. You and I were both commenting on the fact that it's good to be busy, but tell you what, not sure how much more we can pack in a day. And the same goes for news. I mean, there's been a lot that's been in the news cycle lately. We got a lot to tackle. And I guess, top of mind is the let's talk about that New York building that's having some issues. The old Pfizer building that they were doing a conversion on to residential units. They announced, I think it was, earlier this week or last week, that there was some structural columns that were impacted, some buckling that was happening, a handful of floors that were impacted. A lot of fingers to be pointed, but I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on that.
Well, first of all, I love to start out with the fact that thankfully nobody got hurt because the pictures that I've seen so far of that, I would say that was about 1/4 of an inch from going down like dominoes all the way down to the bottom.
Yep.
So hands off to the construction workers who found that problem, reported it quickly, moved on. I mean, once you dig a little bit deeper into what was going on and actually realized it wasn't just an interior renovation going on, that the developer or the person putting the whole thing together actually expanded out multiple on the floors up at the top and then went up, I think, another, I don't know, 4 or 5 floors, whatever they said. So a lot of weight was added onto that. So from the old construction inside of me tells me that somebody didn't do a proper study or looked at it correctly, or I don't know how it got missed, but you could see there was more weight put on top of that, the upper columns, than it was able, to hold. And it's not even Monday morning quarterbacking. It's just the facts. You can see it. It couldn't hold the weight, and that's why it buckled.
Yeah, by no means am I an engineer or a mathematician, but it didn't take a lot to see what what caused the problem. So one thing I am sure of as a lawyer is that there will be a lot of finger pointing, a lot of insurance claims, because it's not just the damage to the building itself. So you got owner, developer, contractor, engineer, design professionals. It's all those businesses that were impacted in the 7 and 9 blocks that they had to shut down. So there's going to be a lot of loss of business insurance claims. It's going to be tied up in litigation. That project's going nowhere for a while. Again, that's just
Yeah.
who knows. You never know, but that's just looking at it. That's I think there's going to be some issues there. Also in the news, John, there was a roof collapse. Big box store had a roof collapse. I saw the videos of it. I don't think there were any injuries in that one, but what did you see when you saw that? I think you mentioned that there's a drain issue.
Yeah, that's what it appeared to be. Yeah, so the video that shows you the inside of the store, the shoppers in there, I'm pretty sure that they went and bought lottery tickets once that was over with, because the one person was standing like inches away from where the beam came down and the whole roof started collapsing. The whole water came in like a tidal wave and pushed the aisles that have the products on it and him and the shopping carts. So it was kind of like a tidal wave effect. So I'm sure he's primed to win the lottery. When I started doing the overviews up top, a lot of people are focusing on most of those that are built like this particular store. Most of it is metal roofing, structural metal panels, and they had solars. That's not where the collapse actually occurred. In the very back of the store, it had on before they put the air conditioning units and so on. It was definitely an EPDM single ply roof. You could see that from the aerial shots. And lo and behold, what do you see? Debris around the drains, and you can see that by one of the other roofs that didn't. So I think that was probably more of a maintenance issue that's going to lead to that, because buildings aren't meant to hold that amount of water, even though it was severe rains. But I think the drainage was probably the issue. And again, not being a structural expert or anything else, I'm just giving you the observations that we saw, from looking at the videos and the overviews.
Yeah, and for our audience, obviously we're, you know, looking at what we see. We're speculating based on kind of what we do and recognize there's facts that we don't know. But, I tell you what, drains, drains, either old drainage that's not replaced or not cleaned out, keeps me in business, John. I mean, I can't tell you how many claims I've gotten that arise out of that. Maintenance of those are absolutely critical. And, one thing I tell every roofer is, anytime you're using existing drainage, you're asking for a claim. So make sure you're advising the customer that, hey, I'm putting on a brand new roof system, but you got, drains from 40 years ago. I'm, happy to work with you to get new drains there, but if you don't want that, let's disclaim this from the contract in the event that you have any kind of collapse or backup or roof failure. Those are cataclysmic type claims. Those are seven-figure plus claims. So big issue, and hated to see that, but glad that it appears nobody got hurt. I hope nobody didn't. So that's a good thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
the initial reports definitely said there was nothing more than cuts and bruises, but there's a pretty two remarkable events just in the last week alone.
yeah, scary stuff. I hate to see that, but I'm glad in both instances they caught it before something worse could happen. So, other big news that's kind of come out over the last few weeks. Supreme Court's been busy, John. There's a lot of rulings. Three that impacted construction all dealt with immigration. First couple were on temporary protected status and asylum seekers. Both of those cases, if I'm summarizing high level, it gave a lot of discretion to DHS in determining, when to revoke TPS status or when to keep it going. And on the asylum, interesting, reading through the case there, it was interesting in that they gave some deference to the Department of Homeland Security as far as determining at what point could someone actually seek asylum. Does it happen at the port of entry? Does it happen before the port of entry, after the port of entry? And part of that is the takeaway is that the U.S. Supreme Court gave a lot of deference as it relates to that. Where it did not give deference was to the administration was with birthright citizenship. And I remember distinctly January 20th, 25th, whenever it was, 2025, when that executive order was signed. I remember hearing that, sitting in my chair going, that's unconstitutional. And because it's directly in the Constitution. And the court opinion is very lengthy, like 180 plus pages, right? It's very lengthy. But what the court basically said is this is in the Constitution. You can't change it by executive order. There may be other things that you can do. You might be able to curtail, the individuals that are looking to travel, birth travel and that kind of stuff. There may be ways to do that either via Congress or otherwise, but you can't touch the Constitution. So, interesting cases there because, you're going to continue to see guardrails being added into a lot of these new immigration rules and regulations that are coming out.
Yeah, I can imagine on the legal side, you have to be extremely busy on that because that changes a whole lot of aspects of company protections and how they go to business and all the other things. On the operational side, I can tell you one thing that I'm hearing more and more as we travel around and meet with contractors is it's starting to become critical mass now. The deportation efforts that are going on because it's not just affecting the workforce of, let's say, so-called illegals. Let's just say that be the case that there's less workforce coming in, but there's less legal immigration coming in. That's almost at a zero. And people who are first year or birthright citizens or have the actual paperwork and all that, they're leaving the construction industry because they don't want to be wrapped up into it. So I think that's going to bring a very interesting aspect to what's going to happen going into 2027 for companies planning for budgets and growth and so on, besides any economical ways you'd look at things like you normally do every year. And what I mean by that is we have a workforce shortage that we've had for decades, so that's nothing new. But now you can't get people to replace the amount of people that are retiring, and now you've just basically probably wiped out, I would say in the last 2 years, it's pretty fair to say another 30% of the workforce, 20 to 30% of the workforce. So now, where does that all come from? And right now, I don't think anybody has the answer to that. And it doesn't seem like we're going to spend any time, from what I can see, the direction of the political mainstream of trying to fix the immigration issue, of allowing more people to come in properly. I don't know how you see it, and I know you're a lot more in tune with what's going on the political side from what you deal with the legal side as you do.
Yeah, it's a political quagmire. I mean, wholesale immigration reform is not going to happen. The only thing I think that we might be able to accomplish is some very, you know, small cuts into it. And I think the key thing that the construction industry needs to focus on is creating a legal path for people to work here that are not already here. Once you start talking about people that are here, I think you're going to run into too many political issues. So, at a minimum, what I would like to see, and the Essential Workforce Act actually covers this, is a pathway to allow foreign workers to come in to the states, be able to work legally, temporary in nature, but gives us the opportunity to get access to that foreign labor, which we desperately need in construction. The issue that I think a lot of people don't understand is we just don't have the domestic equivalent to take over that. And we're also competing with agriculture and hospitality. So it's a zero sum game, as you mentioned, John. And I think, as painful as this sounds, the harsher these immigration laws become, the more pressure is put on Congress to actually do something on the other end, which is figure out a way to get people in here legally, because H-2B just doesn't work great, right? There's not a lot of great ways to do it. Whether it's employer sponsorship or family sponsorship, it takes years. It costs a lot of money. It's broken. Let's figure out a streamlined way to do it. But I know I'm preaching to the choir. So,
Yes,
John,
we'd all love to see that. That's for sure.
yeah, yeah. Before we get to the question of the day, John, I always want to ask you what's making your phone ring. I know you travel as much as I do, if not more. You're always talking to contractors. What's the word, man? What are people saying? What are you hearing out there?
I think a little bit of insecurity. I'm hearing more and more of that. Where are things going to end up? Which I don't. No one has a crystal ball on that. That's impossible. But I think it's starting to stem. I'm finding we've talked about this at different times, but I'm really starting to get contractors getting serious and focusing on the basic blocking and tackling that we've constantly talked about that you need in your company. Get the right processes, the right procedures, learn how to properly estimate and price, learn how to manage your projects correctly. I mean, that pretty much regardless of whatever the political wind blows the country around for the last 250 years, if you do that correctly in your business, you pretty much can wipe out 70, 80% of the issues that you're going to face. And then you're only dealing with 20% rather than dealing with 100 all the time. So that's where I'm really seeing it. People are getting serious on getting back to the basics and let's see what we can do to move forward the right way.
I see the same thing, from the risk mitigation side. And, it's interesting tools like AI and a lot of the other access to information that we have can help make that a little bit easier. I see a lot of people using that as an effective tool, but as always, trust but verify.
Yep.
So, I'm gonna turn to the question of the day, John, and this one,
All right.
always like to keep them on topic. So, this one is from Robert. Robert wants to know if we have any advice with regard to onboarding new employees. I'm assuming he's talking on the labor side and not the admin side. So, I'll let you go take a shot at it, and then I'll chime in.
Well, I mean, just looking at it from an operational standpoint of keeping people on, I think the biggest problem is bringing new employees into any company, especially on the trades side of the work side of the business, is you're getting them in and they usually leave within 30 days. If you're lucky, they're there 30, and then the next step is 60, and then once you get to 90, you think you're home free and they walk out. And you got to look deep is why is that? And most of it comes down to the simple fact that you don't have a good process of how you onboard. It's not something you can say you just follow steps 1 through 8 and you're good. You want to bring them in and look at what happens in the first days you bring them in. Make sure they get all the safety training, understand how the company operates, understand how the reporting structure goes, everything to make them feel like they're part of the team from day one. That's most important. Then after that, I love the idea of companies that, and I did it myself throughout, is set that mentorship up where somebody is actually watching over the new employee. Usually somebody on the crew, the foreman, someone else, a superintendent, somebody that's checking in of how did your week go? What did you learn? Where are you at? What, questions? Man, I'm telling you what, that knocks your churn rate or your loss rate down in almost half, if not 3/4 of the percentage, because people feel, hey, I'm coming into a company, I'm being not only just getting the basics like, oh, here's your manuals, here's the paperwork you sign, get out on the crew, and you find out they're not doing anything except sweeping dirt or dust off the deck for the next 6 weeks or picking up insulation, they're gone then. You got to get them in, you got to keep them evolving throughout their process and staying engaged.
Yeah, you basically took the words out of my mouth. The other thing I would say is that if you got a poisonous employee, get rid of them. the sooner you get rid of them, the better. I mean, obviously, there's a whole slew of legal, ramifications for that, and getting severance agreements and whatever else you might need. But at the end of the day, if you've got somebody that is poisonous, that is also impacting other employees, you got to carve them out, and you got to get rid of them sooner rather than later.
You got to rip that Band-Aid off quick. We know that from all the years together. You
Yes,
got to
sir.
do it.
Yes, sir. I learned the hard way. So, well, John, I always enjoy talking to you. I know we've covered a lot today. I want to thank our listeners. Always appreciate the questions and the feedback. If you need to get a hold of me, you can reach me at trent.cotney@arlaw.com or at Trent Cotney on social. John, how can they reach you?
You can get me at jkenny at cotneyconsulting.com or John Kenney on social media. And always get a lot of new hookups on social media after we do these, Trent. And I always look forward to having new people coming on board and talking to them.
Yeah, same here, same here. And we'll be on the world tour here coming up definitely in 3Q and 4Q. So stop by and say hi to us at an expo near you. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time on Law and Mortar.
Take care.